The rusted bike bell was barely visible under the moss and pine needles that had settled at the edge of the disused Alder Creek Bridge. It was late October when a local surveyor working for the Mendocino County Roads Department paused to inspect an area slated for restoration. That's when he saw it, worn brass, dulled by time but unmistakable in shape and sound. A soft chime rang when he touched it. What struck him most wasn't the object's age, but the pink plastic sticker still stuck to its side, a faded unicorn, and beneath it, initials handwritten in marker, G.T. Within days, forensic teams cordoned off the area. Locals watched as yellow tape once again fluttered near the ravine, the same place where, 14 years earlier, a search team had paused, believing the area too steep to hold clues. The case had been silent for over a decade, but now, with one forgotten object, the silence broke. In July of 2009, Grace Taylor was 13 years old. An only child, she lived with her mother, Dana, in a modest blue house off Franklin Street. Grace was known for being quiet, but fiercely curious. She devoured mystery novels and carried a small notepad with her everywhere, noting birds, cloud shapes, and suspicious things, as she called them. On the morning of July 5th, she left home wearing a purple windbreaker, her bike helmet secured tight, and rode off down Redwood Avenue. It was a short ride, a summer loop she'd done dozens of times before, but that morning she never returned. Dana Taylor remembered the moment the timeline broke. She said she'd be back in 20 minutes, Dana told the original investigators. She always came back. By midday, after checking the nearby park and a few of Grace's known routes, Dana called the police. Within 3 hours, Grace was officially reported missing. Fort Bragg, a small coastal town north of San Francisco, had rarely seen crime of that magnitude. The community was tight-knit. Officers from the Mendocino County Sheriff's Office launched a full search effort within hours. Helicopters swept the coastline, search dogs were brought in, and local volunteers combed trails with flashlights and walkie-talkies. Investigators quickly zeroed in on the last confirmed sighting. A neighbor 2 blocks over saw Grace cycling past the Alder Creek Trail access path at approximately 9:12 a.m. She waved, smiled, and disappeared down the hill. After that, there was nothing. No camera footage from the area, no known witnesses, just her empty route, and a mother left behind in confusion. Detective Alan Brewster, who had taken the lead in 2009, recalled how fast the case grew cold. "We had tire marks that matched Grace's bike near the creek path," he told local news at the time, but there was no sign of struggle, no debris, nothing else. The bike itself had never been found. A red Trek Mountain 24 with custom purple handlebars. Grace's cell phone was at home. Dana had restricted its use during summer to limit screen time. That, Brewster later admitted, might have cost them precious data. By the third day, the FBI became involved. Grace's photos circulated statewide. Checkpoints were established on Highway 1, and school counselors were brought in for interviews. A few children claimed to have heard Grace talking about an abandoned shack in the woods past the creek, but no such structure was found. One tip came from an elderly couple who often walked their dog near Alder Creek. They mentioned a white van parked illegally near the trail access point the morning Grace disappeared. A partial plate was recorded, but the lead led nowhere. The vehicle had belonged to a utility contractor from Ukiah who was verified to be out of town at the time. Tension grew when a local maintenance worker reported seeing a girl matching Grace's description riding south, alone, toward the wooded area near the Pacific Rim trailhead around 9:40 a.m. That sighting, however, was never corroborated. The worker failed to describe her outfit accurately, a detail that undermined his credibility. By week's end, a heat wave hit the region, further complicating search conditions. Dogs lost scent trails in the rising temperatures. Creek water levels dropped, revealing nothing but trash and animal tracks. Detectives shifted focus. The investigation began to look inward. Grace's father, Anthony Taylor, who lived in San Diego and was estranged from the family, was contacted. He flew in immediately and cooperated fully. His alibi, a business trip in Phoenix, was confirmed with timestamps, hotel logs, and flight data. Despite their estrangement, no evidence linked him to the disappearance. Dana, meanwhile, became the center of media attention. Her interviews were methodical, restrained, but her fatigue was visible. Online forums questioned her behavior. Why hadn't she joined more of the search efforts? Why had she waited over 2 hours before calling 911? Theories flourished, but none stuck. 14 years passed. Grace's case was archived. Annual memorial rides were held in Fort Bragg every July. Her name appeared once a year in local newspapers, usually in conjunction with other cold cases. Nothing more emerged. Until the bell. In 2023, forensic analysts confirmed that the bike bell found near the bridge matched a model that had gone off the market in 2007. The sticker had been added over the protective sealant, a detail consistent with photos of Grace's bike from family albums. Soil samples under the bell contained fragments of synthetic tire tread, too decomposed for full extraction, but suggestive of a bike having been there. More intriguing was a secondary discovery. 10 feet from the bell's location, embedded in a drainage groove beneath the bridge, was a fragment of black nylon strap. It was consistent with the type used on youth-size bike helmets. Though degraded, DNA extraction was attempted. A partial mitochondrial profile was retrieved. The sequence matched Dana Taylor. That meant the strap had likely come from Grace's helmet, or one she had worn and handled often. The area where the bell and strap were found was approximately 1.3 miles from Grace's last confirmed location. Dense brush had hidden that portion of the trail for years, inaccessible during wetter months and overlooked in the original ground search due to terrain restrictions. Detectives reopened the case formally in late 2023. Among the first things they did was reconstruct Grace's possible route based on the new discovery. Using topographic modeling and time-distance analysis, a new timeline was created. Assuming Grace left home at 9 a.m., she could have reached the bridge by 9:20. That window aligned almost exactly with the last known sighting. But if she had reached the bridge, why had no trace of her ever been found there until now? Then came a discovery from the original case files, an overlooked traffic camera photo, dated July 5, 2009. Time-stamped 9:26 a.m. It captured the narrow bend of Redwood Avenue and a silhouette. A small figure, pushing a bicycle, crossing the road near the service entrance to an old lumber mill, now abandoned. Behind her, slightly blurred, was a second figure, taller, unidentified, and just like that, the case changed course. The photo was grainy, taken from a low-resolution traffic camera positioned across from the entrance to the disused Redwood lumber facility. But when enhanced, the image revealed more than anyone expected. Grace Taylor, clearly visible by the distinctive shape of her purple windbreaker and bike frame, is walking her bicycle, not riding it. The timestamp 9:26 a.m. aligns almost precisely with the revised timeline. But the true question wasn't about her, it was about the figure behind her. Slightly out of focus, half shadowed by tree cover, a second figure appears. Male, judging by build, baseball cap, hoodie, arms in pockets. His face is obscured, but the body language suggests one thing. He's walking in the same direction as Grace. Investigators in 2009 had never seen this image. It had been stored incorrectly, misfiled under a different incident review, then archived before it was ever analyzed. Detective Brewster, now retired but acting as consultant, looked over the image in silence. "We missed this," he muttered. "We missed a lot." Investigators began cross-referencing employee records from the lumber mill, even though it had been closed since 2007. A few former workers still lived nearby. One name came up repeatedly: Shane Miller, a maintenance contractor who had continued squatting in one of the old storage units for nearly 6 months after the facility shut down. He had been cited twice in 2008 for trespassing and drug possession. When contacted in 2009, he told investigators he'd left the county a year prior. No one had verified that, but there was more. In the case logs from the original investigation, there had been a 911 call on July 6, 2009, one day after Grace vanished. A local man reported yelling and strange noises near the Alder Creek footbridge around midnight. Officers responded hours later, but found nothing. The audio from the dispatch was never pulled. Until now. The tape was archived, but when retrieved and digitized, a brief conversation surfaced. Dispatch: Mendocino Sheriff, what's your emergency? Caller: yeah, I think someone's fighting down by Alder Creek, like a girl maybe. I heard a scream. Dispatch: do you see anyone? Caller: no, it stopped, but I don't know. It just didn't sound right. Why hadn't this triggered a secondary search back then? The responding officer's note said it was likely campers or teenagers, and no further action was taken. But with the bell now found near that exact location, the call took on chilling new relevance. In November 2023, detectives returned to the bridge. This time, they weren't alone. A cadaver dog named Echo, trained specifically for cold case recovery, alerted near the lower embankment. A forensic team began excavation. 2 feet beneath the surface, embedded in hard clay and roots, they found something. A scrap of synthetic fabric, purple nylon with white stitching. Lab analysis confirmed it matched Grace's windbreaker, a custom model with a discontinued stitching pattern from 2008. A fragment of a zipper was extracted, and with it, a partial DNA profile. It was mitochondrial, again, matching the maternal lineage of Dana Taylor. While not definitive, it was enough to warrant a deeper dig. Later that week, a second item emerged: the plastic lens from a bicycle reflector, cracked, weathered, and caked in dirt. It was determined to be a match for the front reflector of a 2009 Trek Mountain 24, Grace's model. The forensic team requested a digital elevation map reconstruction of the area surrounding the bridge. It revealed a shallow ravine that could have allowed someone to drag or dispose of a bike without being seen from the trailhead. The area had been missed in 2009 due to overgrowth and the lack of aerial support during that week's search. Then came a break. A woman named Leanne Grigsby, who had lived in Fort Bragg in 2009, reached out after hearing about the rediscovery on local news. She had been working night shifts at the Seafoam Motel at the time. On the morning of July 5, 2009, at exactly 9:45 a.m., she said she saw a man walking along the coast road, pulling a bicycle beside him. "I remember it," she told investigators. "It was odd. The guy wasn't riding the bike, just dragging it. It was red. And I remember thinking, that's a kid's bike." Leanne had never reported the sighting. She didn't know about Grace's disappearance until days later, and by then, she assumed it had been handled. Investigators showed her a lineup of possible individuals. She pointed to a photo. "That's the guy." It was Shane Miller, but Shane had since moved to Nevada. A records request showed he'd been arrested in Reno in 2015 for petty theft, but released. A warrant for questioning was issued. He was brought back to Mendocino for interrogation in January 2024. In recorded interviews, Shane was evasive. "I didn't know the girl. I never walked near the bridge. I don't even remember where I was that day." But inconsistencies surfaced. He originally claimed to have been out of town on July 5th, but a check of employment logs from a local salvage yard showed he clocked in that morning, just after 10:30 a.m. When confronted with the traffic cam photo, Shane grew visibly tense. "That's not me," he said, but he offered no alibi for the half-hour window between 9:00 and 9:30. A search warrant was issued for a storage unit Shane had rented briefly in 2009, paid in cash. The unit had since been emptied, but among the few leftover items, a tool bag, some rusted bike parts, and a water-damaged disposable camera. Miraculously, one photo was recoverable. It was blurry with heavy light distortion, but it showed a wooded area, a trail, and in the corner, partially visible, a bike tire, red, with a sticker peeling from the frame. Photogrammetry experts were brought in. The sticker matched one Grace's mother recalled placing herself, a starburst decal in metallic purple, custom from a local craft shop. Though the photo's date was smudged, it held enough metadata to place it within a 24-hour range of July 5, 2009. The evidence was mounting, but still circumstantial. No body, no definitive proof of what happened at the bridge. The DA hesitated to press charges, citing lack of direct forensic evidence tying Shane Miller to Grace's presumed death. But the investigation pressed on. DNA analysts revisited the helmet strap fragment found near the bridge. While the partial profile matched Grace's maternal line, newer techniques, probabilistic genotyping, isolated trace male DNA. It was degraded, partial, but enough for a CODIS upload, no match, not yet. Still, the case had shifted, public interest reignited, media coverage surged. Grace's photo reappeared on digital billboards across California. Then in late March 2024, a call came in from a retired postal worker who used to service the Alder Creek area. He remembered something peculiar from that week in 2009. A package returned from the Taylor residence. Unclaimed. Postmarked July 6th. Inside it, law enforcement found a postcard, never opened. The return address was blank. But the message on the card was simple. She shouldn't have been alone. The handwriting was slanted, block letters, no signature. The paper was preserved. Forensic ink analysis was requested. It matched a brand of marker sold at a Fort Bragg convenience store, one frequented by Shane Miller, according to a 2009 witness statement. The bridge, the bell, the photo, the postcard. But still, no body, no confession, no closure. By the spring of 2024, the Grace Taylor case was no longer just a local mystery. It had become national news. The rediscovery of physical evidence, a reinterrogated witness, and now a postcard suggesting taunting intent reignited the decades-old investigation. But progress came at a cost. Dana Taylor, now in her late 50s, had stayed in Fort Bragg all these years. Her life, quietly shaped by loss, had been reduced to a fixed daily ritual. Coffee at the same diner, an afternoon walk past her daughter's memorial plaque near the Alder Creek Trail, and evenings spent sorting letters from well-meaning strangers who still sent tips. She rarely spoke to reporters, but after the postcard surfaced, she released a statement. "If someone out there thinks this is a game, it's not. I knew Grace. She wasn't careless, and she wasn't alone that day. Someone made sure of that." For investigators, this marked a new phase. The psychological dimension of the crime began to take precedence. Criminologists were brought in to analyze the letter, its structure, its spacing, the possible age and sex of the writer, the consensus. Male, likely 20s to 30s in 2009, familiar with the area. Possible antisocial tendencies, someone who knew Grace or watched her. Attention returned to Shane Miller. His legal counsel had grown aggressive, refusing further interviews. Without direct DNA evidence, he remained a person of interest, not a suspect. Then came a complication. In May 2024, While scanning through unindexed footage recovered from old DV tapes submitted by local residents in 2009, a digital forensics intern stumbled upon something, a short home video. The footage, time-stamped July 4th, 2009, the night before Grace vanished, showed a small 4th of July gathering near Pomo Bluffs Park. Teenagers, fireworks, laughter. But at minute 2, the camera pans briefly toward the tree line. There, standing partially obscured, is a man. His hoodie is dark grey, pulled low. He's watching. In the foreground, unaware of the lens, is Grace Taylor, laughing, spinning her bike's wheel idly. She's less than 20 feet from him. This moment, captured entirely by chance, reframed the investigation. The footage was sent to a video analyst. Despite the poor resolution, facial comparison software produced an 84% match to Shane Miller. It wasn't enough for an arrest, but it corroborated proximity, and it wasn't the only anomaly. In the corner of the frame, barely visible under a flickering firework, is a van, white, with a dent above the rear left wheel. A 2009 utility van with that same description had been flagged early in the investigation and dismissed. It had been registered to a now defunct landscaping company in Ukiah. At the time, the owner told police it had been out of use and stored in a locked lot. The company's records, however, were never deeply audited. A new subpoena was issued. Storage logs were cross-referenced with security data. No alarm was triggered at the yard between July 3rd and 6th, but one camera had survived, a single fixed lens camera overlooking the rear lot. Investigators reviewed the footage, degraded but intact. At 5:42 a.m. on July 5th, the van's rear gate opened. A person, small, possibly female, was visible briefly before disappearing back inside. The timestamp, the morning of Grace's disappearance. The van had moved. 2 months later, with legal pressure mounting, the old owner of the company confessed Shane Miller, a friend of his stepson, had keys to the yard and access to the van. He often slept in the vehicle without permission. The police had never followed up because the company had ceased operations before the inquiry, and the connection was never made. This was the link they needed. The van was found in a salvage yard east of Redding, California. It had been stripped for parts, but inside the side panel wall cavity, behind an interior panel, forensics recovered fibers and degraded biological material. Among the fragments, they identified hair strands, one of them consistent with Grace Taylor's mitochondrial DNA. Another, tested using newer familial search algorithms, had markers that aligned with Shane Miller's known relatives. Finally, a warrant for his arrest was issued. But when U.S. Marshals arrived at Shane's residence in Sparks, Nevada, he was gone. A neighbor reported seeing him leave 2 days earlier with a duffel bag and a burner phone. A grey Honda Civic, also now missing, had been parked outside for weeks. A BOLO alert was issued across the state. For weeks, the trail was cold again. But then, a call came in from a small roadside motel in Tonopah, Nevada. The manager reported a man who fit Shane's description, who checked in under the name Ray Barton. The guest had left in a hurry, abandoning several belongings. Among the items, a crumpled receipt from a gas station in Fort Bragg, dated June 12, 2024, 2 days before the bike bell was discovered. He had been there, possibly watching, possibly placing the bell. Investigators now believe Shane had revisited the area to plant the object, a psychological tactic, maybe guilt, maybe power, or maybe both. In July 2024, after a nationwide manhunt, Shane Miller was apprehended in a parking lot outside Barstow, California. He had attempted to alter his appearance, hair dyed, beard grown, but fingerprints confirmed his identity. During the initial interrogation, Shane said nothing. When presented with the evidence, he leaned back in his chair and whispered, "I never touched her." She was already gone. But what did he mean? Over weeks of interviews, his story changed, sometimes suggesting another person was involved, sometimes denying everything. He hinted at someone she trusted, but never gave a name. The DA's office debated whether to pursue murder charges. Without a body and with no confession, the case hinged on circumstantial forensic material. After consultation with Grace's family, they charged Shane Miller with felony abduction, obstruction of justice, and desecration of evidence. The murder charge remained conditional, awaiting further evidence or discovery of Grace's remains. In October 2024, a formal trial date was set. Shane's defense leaned heavily on the absence of a body and lack of direct DNA, tying him to an act of violence. Prosecutors, however, built a timeline airtight in implication: surveillance, forensic residue, proximity, behavior, motive. Grace Taylor's bike was never found, neither was her body, but the weight of 14 years and the silence that followed was finally broken. At the sentencing hearing in March 2025, Dana Taylor stood and read a single sentence: "You may have taken her body, but you'll never erase who she was, and you'll never again be free to roam where children live." Shane was sentenced to 40 years for the confirmed charges. No parole for at least 30, but for Dana and for Fort Bragg, closure remained incomplete. The Alder Creek Trail reopened quietly. A bench was placed near the bridge, carved with her name and a phrase etched into metal. Her voice, though missing, never stopped echoing. To this day, Grace Taylor is officially classified as missing, presumed deceased. Her body has never been recovered. And the question of what truly happened beneath that old bridge, what moment of silence turned into disappearance, remains a void the law could only partially fill. Some answers were found, others may never come. But the bell rings now in a courtroom archive, proof that time may bury things, but it never fully silences them.